It is an honor to join you today as the Freedom of Information Foundation of Texas celebrates the 50th anniversary of the Texas Public Information Act. The issue of government transparency is just more important today, I think more important today than it was even decades ago. There's so much going on, our government is so much bigger, there's a lot at stake, and so celebrating a half a century of that act is important, and how we further it and better it is even more important. Of course, my office has worked with Kelly and her team from the foundation for many years, and I'm going to talk about some of the real-world examples of legislation that my office has pursued through the years to improve the public's access to government. And I've worked with a lot of different members, both Democrats and Republicans, House members, rural and also urban. It should be no surprise to y'all that it really should not be a partisan issue ever to be able to get that information out. I have a personal tie to the history of the Texas Public Information Act, previously known, and I still call it at times, the Open Records Act, because it was passed in 1973 following the Sharpstown stock fraud scandal of 1971 and 1972 that rocked state government. I was a young girl and growing up in Brenham, Texas, but I can recall the incredible public debate over this event because the Speaker of the House at the time was from where? Brenham, Texas. And so growing up, I think those events helped foster a deep respect for the public's role in government and the public's right to information about what was happening in their government. I was a little girl sitting at that dining room table where my mother, we sat down and had dinner every night, and I could remember the debates that she and my father had about the Sharpstown scandal, and it really did have a huge impact on me. I'll tell y'all that my dad was a big Gus Mutcher fan, and my mother was not. And so it was a lively conversation. And so I developed the thought that, and I didn't coin this phrase, but I certainly adhere to it, sunlight is the best disinfectant. In the country we say, hey, watch how the cockroaches scatter when you turn on the lights. And there's some real truth to that. They say that experience is a stern master, and I think that the idea of public accountability that was forged back 50 years ago is worth celebrating and protecting now and well forever, actually, not just into the future, but forever. The public's trust in institutions is sinking. I feel that. Y'all feel that. And at the same time, the fight for public information is struggling, and I think there is a direct correlation. People are starving for the facts, and the Texas Public Information Act is an important tool to get those facts into the public. I'm going to talk about a situation. It might make some of you uncomfortable in the room, but you know, I mean, that's what y'all do. You make people, you feed information, you make some of us sometimes feel uncomfortable when we have to answer those questions, but you know, as Chair of Health and Human Services, I lived through what I think is going to be probably the most monumental event in our lives, which was the COVID pandemic. And when I say that, I want to put that in perspective for y'all. It wasn't just the fear of, oh my gosh, you know, we have this pandemic going on, but it was the actions that the government took that are going to have lasting effects. Before I came here this morning, I was meeting with one of the state agencies, a commissioner of one of the state agencies that, as a chairman, I have the honor to serve and to oversee. And we talked about the long-term effects of the lockdowns and the impacts on our children when they weren't in school, the learning loss, how they kind of began to raise themselves. Some children have really never recovered. And I'm going to tell y'all that it is going to take decades upon decades. We are going to pay in the mental health realm as well as in the learning loss realm for decades to come. So Look only as far as the recent events with COVID where public health care data was put into the spotlight. And we learned that it could be used for transparency and public good, but also for manipulation if that data wasn't shared with the greater public. You know, I think that Laura touched on that. And the example that she gave, it was happening right in my little hometown of Brenham, Texas. Of course, you know, none of us were traveling. We were all there. I was on conference calls from the White House to the governor, to the lieutenant governor, to other state senators, to our nursing facilities, to hospitals and everything else. And I will tell you that my staff, we never closed the office, and we went into the office because we were there to serve the public. And one of the things was we kept getting these phone calls about a particular nursing facility. And then the media, local media, started calling me, do you have any information? We couldn't get any information. I want you to know that I was working with our state agencies, couldn't get a reaction from some of the highest elected officials in our state. And at one point I looked at my chief of staff and I said, call the media. I'm about to do a press conference and I'm gonna blow the socks off for everybody. And you know, I love this. My chief of staff, Chris, goes, hey, boss, before we do that, could we make one more phone call? Because I was gonna have scorched earth. There was gonna be nothing left when I finished with it. I called Nim Kidd, and Nim, he said, I can have a team there. In the end, when the dust settled, there were over, I think at the time, there had been 23 deaths in this nursing facility, and no one knew it. Can y'all believe that? We couldn't get that information. And in the end, I mean, we were ranked as like the worst facility. I think there was one nursing facility in Fort Worth that had 25 deaths. And it took forever to pull it out, and the media was trying. And so that is something that I have to say was the hidden information there was used for the bad. But you know, I will say that during COVID, we needed the truth about things that were happening, and it was such a crazy time. Doctors were being punished for recommending treatments. And if you want to think that ivermectin or hydroxychloroquine is controversial, go ahead and think it. But I know through some open records requests and using FOIA recently, we've seen that there were documents that were now saying that the CDC did know that there were some effective treatments. And I can't understand the darkness of that when we had people die. I cannot understand that. And so, you know, why? And so we have to seek the truth, even when the truth is something that we don't like. Maybe it's something about a president that you don't necessarily like and think that he's crazy. But go ahead and seek the truth, especially in the public health realm, because it truly may save lives. You know, I looked at, there was a time when we could not get information from hospitals on how many beds that they had. Literally, we would call the hospitals and we would look to try to find how many beds they had because we weren't getting that data. And so the struggle for information doesn't always have to come from FOIA, but it is a great tool when government is trying to hide something from us. And so with that, I will just say that, you know, during COVID, we had a need for information about COVID deaths, and journalists would try to find the difference between those who died with COVID versus those who died of COVID. And this is, you know, very, very important data because we were making decisions based upon that again, as I said in my previous remarks, could impact what we did with our children and the decisions that we made of when we opened schools, when we didn't open schools, that may impact someone's life for the rest of their lives. And so, you know, we just right here in Texas, I believe it was, last year, a federal judge, here in Austin ordered the FDA to make public the data it relied on to license Pfizer's COVID mRNA vaccine. He said all information needed to be made public within about 8 months. Now keep in mind, that's roughly 75 years faster. Can I say that again? I don't think anyone in this room would be alive in 75 years. 75 years faster than the FDA said it could take to complete a Freedom of Information Act request by a group of doctors and scientists. Put that in. If it worked for the federal judge who has now stepped in and said, no, you have 8 months instead of 75 years. So we all benefit when the public can review those 450,000 pages of material about the mRNA vaccine that Pfizer produced. And keep in mind that this will help us better ourselves for the next pandemic, for the next emergency. Science should not be hidden from the public. It just should not. How do we get better? You know, how do we get better? Bill, we get better because we have the information that it can't be hidden for 75 years. So in public health, we must have the most accurate data possible so that the decision makers can better gauge the risks. And I would say in the realm that I deal with, and save lives. So the freedom of information is a key component to making good decisions.